Thank you so much for joining me, Anita. And U.S. Women Council helped a lot of phenomenal women for the past 20 years, and they have been doing a lot of work for Afghanistan. And now most of them somehow left the country, and we still see the women become more creative, and they don't stop their protests. What's your thoughts about women protests in Afghanistan?
Well, a couple of things I feel about watching and hearing about the women protests. Of course, you worry for them and what the reaction might be, or how they may be treated by the leadership in that country. That's one side. The other side, and the more important side, is the amazing display of courage and resilience, which is really an example of why these 20 years of investment in Afghanistan and growing this generation of leadership and empowerment of women, why we should have hope for them in this very difficult time, that they are willing to do that. They don't know, really, a lot of them, particularly the young women, don't know a life under the Taliban like the generation before them. But they know that's not what they want. And I think it's an amazing display of courage and resilience to be willing to risk everything to protest.
So almost like a few months past, or 4 months, that women are deprived from basic rights, education, back to work, and now a lot of social rights restriction, including travel ban from far away in distances. And a lot of women I talk to inside Afghanistan, they worry somehow that the situation is getting more dire for them. Why the world is so silent for that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Why is the world silent on that? We can't be the only nation speaking out, against that, because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to be restricting the rights and the freedom of movement and the access to education, access to healthcare for half the population. And I think what's really striking to me is this leadership of the Taliban, if you can call it leadership, because they're not leading their nation into progress, they're taking them backwards. How they can make a decision to restrict access to services and to basic rights when they're so worried about educated people leaving the country, because they know they need educated people to rebuild the country. But if you're restricting the rights of half the population, it's not sustainable. And I think that it is important that countries of the world who were invested in Afghanistan, who put a lot of blood and treasure and sacrifice, but worked hand in hand with Afghans, particularly Afghan women, to improve their lives, that we have to continue to speak out. And there are, nations and private citizens, as well as governments, that are doing that. But it's not what the Taliban wants to hear. So clearly they are pivoting to other nations like Iran, China, perhaps, but especially Iran, Russia, others who do not respect rights of women. And that's worrisome.
So U.S. prominent women used to support Afghan women widely, including former First Lady Clinton, Laura Bush, Michelle Obama. So what has to be done from U.S. side to encourage Taliban to respect women's rights and let them at least get the education they deserve, because a lot of Islamic countries allow education. Islam allows education.
Right. Well, a couple of things. We have to always continue to put pressure, use those leading voices in our country, like Laura Bush, like Hillary Clinton, others who really have a history of investing in Afghan women and have put a lot of effort for the last 2 decades in it. We have to continue to hear from voices like that. And we are, because every opportunity that they are given to do that, they are. And through, for example, the George Bush Presidential Institute and the Laura Bush Women's Initiative there, they are continuing to work with Afghan women in the best way that they can. And they also are, putting pressure on in body, our parliamentary body, our Congress, because there are people there in the Congress who do care about the lives of women in Afghanistan and the freedom and security they deserve, because it has also a direct result on our country. So, you know, working in partnership with members of our Congress, working as private individuals, using our voices, and then also, and we'll never stop that. We'll never stop that. We will never walk away. Now what we can do. I think the third thing, beyond individuals, beyond the media speaking out, beyond the Congress, the third thing is really the Afghan diaspora here and those who have left the country and what they are doing to help not only resettle Afghan refugees here, but try in the most innovative ways possible to still provide some services on the ground. And one of those, you know, is through online education, the best way that we can possibly do it to continue education in Afghanistan.
But a lot of restriction on women, again, hurting women, especially women lost wages. They have no income. They can't even travel. They're really dying on the street in the snow. But how they can really access to online education when they have nothing, at least even internet or electricity? This is a little tough thing, but just to touch base on what you said, a lot of women left Afghanistan. What U.S. Women Council is doing with a lot of like highly educated women, mostly now in the U.S. and other countries, is there an appetite to really gather these women and support them, and somehow they can try to reach out to the sisters inside Afghanistan and help them as well?
Well, first of all, there is really an appetite amongst Americans and American communities to really help resettle Afghans, families, trying to reunite families, trying to provide housing, clothing, food, education, to really rebuild their lives. It's a devastating situation, and the numbers are astounding of who are being resettled, but also still many more that we need to help. So that's one area where, and the U.S. Afghan Women's Council is involved through our members, through the programs that we already have provided, but the members, the Afghan Council members who are leading programs, are very involved in the resettlement efforts here in this country, in their own communities, and then also with the national effort, the welcomeus.org, are helping in the resettlement. Now, those that are still, who have had programs that have been in existence for 20 years, how they are able to continue to operate in Afghanistan, it has been a challenge. Some programs have had to close. Some of the schools have had to close. Yet there are ways that they still can continue to raise money and find ways, safe ways, to get some resources into the country, working with other NGOs. It's a massive undertaking. It's very difficult. People don't want to give up. They don't want to give up on the 20 years of investment that they have made. There are, of course, it's very distressing that so much of what we built there, women's resource centers that made it possible for women to earn a living, as you say now, you know, to keep them out of poverty, to help them support themselves and help them support their families. All I can say to you is we won't give up. We will find every creative way that we can to provide some services, to provide resources, to partner with other big organizations that are operating on the ground safely, and, you know, to just do whatever we can. It's not easy. There's no doubt about it. And there's a lot that's slipping through the cracks. We have to be very honest, you know, about that. But if you can, you know, help one person, one family, and continue to do these other things that we talked about, putting public pressure on the Afghan government, such as it is, on the international community, we have to do all those things together.
Sounds good. Recently, the last question, Secretary Blinken appointed Rina Amiri and Stephanie Foster for helping Afghan women. One of the issues that I always get asked, especially by Afghan female journalists and activists, about this process of P2 visa, which is a lot of women are stuck with this process. They are in Turkey, they're suffering. Right. They have no status in Turkey, and they are in different countries. They're in Albania, different areas waiting for P2, and there is no clear path how they can process or something. What has to be done? Are you in touch with Rina, and any way that U.S. Women Council helping these women get them out where they are?
Right. Well, a couple of things, right? Both Rina and Stephanie have a huge undertaking to help to untangle this mess that has been created. There's no doubt about it that it is a difficult process. It was not very clear. It was done in haste, obviously. I think with best intentions, I want to say with best intentions to get as many people out as possible. Yet when something that massive happens so quickly without, as we understand it, or as I think we understand it, not enough time to put a process in place, there's a lot of fixing that they have to do. They have a big responsibility on their plates. I know they both care about Afghan women, and they both were deeply involved and deeply invested in Afghan women's education and empowerment and rights. So I feel that their the interest is very deep, it's very sincere, and they will do everything that they can. But I think to your other point is, what is the Afghan Women's Council doing? We, of course, after 20 years of working with so many programs and women and families on the ground, we have heard from them all through this process of what they are facing. We are helping to document and to really elevate those cases to make sure that they are not falling through the cracks. That's the best role that we can play as a liaison to identify people that we know are suffering and are stuck in this limbo. It is not an easy answer. It is not going to be fixed overnight. Some of the solutions, or some of the resolutions will not be what we all hope for, but as many as they can do, as many as they can untangle, as many as they can resolve will be an absolute important priority for them. And to be a collective, to actually get all the information under one place, because that has been one of the difficulties too.